All right, folks, welcome to today's broadcast. My name is Rita Larkin with DAR, the Division of Data Assessment and Research, along with our team members here from SSK-12 and other divisions within OSSE. This month's webinar will be focused on non-public oversight of services. So we'll be talking a lot about that in today's broadcast. The agenda for today, as I mentioned, we're going to review the responsibilities related to our non-publics. We will talk about non-public access in SEDS, attendance monitoring for non-publics, and service logging and monitoring. We will follow that up with some reminders and announcements, specifically for ESY, some other special education-related announcements and system updates. So let's go ahead and get started with today's presentation.
Good morning, this is Christy Weaver-Harris. I'm the Policy Manager in K-12 Systems and Support. And today's webinar is going to focus on our students placed in non-public schools and LEA responsibilities related to those students. So I'm going to give a quick overview of general LEA responsibilities, and we're also going to talk a little bit about your specific data responsibilities. So the laws regarding LEA responsibilities for students at non-public schools are kind of scattered around, but I wanted to give you guys some ideas of where you could be looking to get more information on this. So some of your responsibilities are detailed in Chapter 28, which is in Title 5A of the DCMR, and I know this is all real legally, but this is just where to find it. I want to make sure everybody knows. So LEA responsibilities are detailed in Title 5A of the DCMR at 2808. There's also some LEA responsibilities in the current Chapter 30 under 3019, and that 3019 is the section around charter school responsibilities. So the responsibilities for DCPS were already stated in Chapter 30 early on, and then later we added 3019 to clarify that public charter schools are also share the same responsibilities that DCPS has for students placed in non-public schools. And then regarding placement in a non-public school, you should be looking at OSSE's policies and procedures for placement review revised. And also in the upcoming eventual rewrite of Chapter 30, we'll make sure that LEA or public charter and DCPS responsibilities are blended so that it's much clearer that we're all responsible for the same thing. So the LEA in which the student is enrolled and the non-public where the student is attending share responsibilities for ensuring the student has a complete and appropriate IEP that is being implemented. And that is just by virtue of the LEA. When a student is placed in a non-public school, the LEA of enrollment remains responsible for that student. So those responsibilities include ensuring current and accurate data in all systems and ensuring IDEA compliance. So when we say accurate and up-to-date and complete data, we mean in the SED system, in SLED, and in your LEA student information system. So one thing that we've seen that's had slowdown problems in other data systems is when the LEA does not change the students attending school in the student information system or in your SIS. So make sure that when a student is placed in a non-public school that you are going back into your SIS, and then this may be you, it may be your LEA data manager, it may be your registrar, whatever person in your building is responsible for the LEA SIS, is making sure that the students attending school is accurately updated in your SIS. And also the LEA is responsible for compliance with IDEA requirements. And you know this because you hear about us, or you hear from us about that, both from our non-public monitoring team and from our IDEA monitoring team. So in current Chapter 30, there are some details around LEA responsibilities. And the LEA is responsible, like I said, the LEA remains responsible for non-public students attending non-public schools, including ensuring evaluations and current eligibilities. And that means ensuring that it is done. So it can be completed by either the charter school or the non-public school, and we recommend that you sparse that out in your MOA or contract with the non-public school and make sure that that's part of defining the responsibilities for each party under those agreements. LEAs are responsible for attending IEP meetings, for monitoring student progress while they're at the non-public, for ensuring administration of the PARCC and the MSAA assessments, general accountability as required under ESEA, which means that those students are included in your metrics for ESEA accountability. And then you're also responsible for transitioning the child out of the non-public to a lesser restrictive environment if it's determined appropriate by the child's IEP team. So the LEA responsibility for maintaining accurate data in the student SED file is also covered in Chapter 30. And this usually requires the non-public school to have appropriate access in SED, which we're going to get into in a minute. And we talked about this previously too. Part of your responsibilities for ensuring an accurate SED file for the student is ensuring that the non-public school has access to, first of all, to SEDS, and then secondly, to the student in SEDS. And we're going to talk about how you can implement those responsibilities in a second. But I want to frame your thinking in a way that you remain responsible for these students when they are at a non-public school, and part of that responsibility is ensuring that the non-public can document the services that they are providing. So accurate records and SEDS includes ensuring current and timely reevaluations and eligibilities, ensuring current and timely review of IEPs, and ensuring that that IEP is appropriate for that student, and ensuring timely documentation of service provision, which is really the key for ensuring that non-publics have access to the student instead. If they're not documenting the services, we have a hard time on our side, first of all, seeing it, and second of all, reimbursing for it. Also, again, you have to ensure that non-public students participate in statewide assessments. So this is some more information on the LEA responsibilities for a student, including stepping that student down to a lesser restrictive environment, maintaining capacity to serve the child, and that may also include having to get permission from the public charter school board to exceed your enrollment numbers. Basically, the student stays enrolled at your LEA, and you must remain capable of serving that student should they return to your LEA from the non-public school, and then continuing to monitor each child's progress at the non-public school, and that is part of your participation in IEP team meetings, but you want to make sure that you're paying attention to the child's academic and social emotional progress. So if a student has not transitioned, or if a student is placed in a non-public school and they are about to age out of your LEA, say your LEA only serves up to age 13, or you serve through 8th grade, and the child is attending a non-public school but is enrolled in your LEA, within 120 days of the end of the school year, you need to be providing written notification to the parent of their responsibility to enroll in another LEA. So that child will reach the age or the grade at which you are unable to serve them, and you need to be notifying parents at least 120 days prior to the end of the school year of notify the parent of their responsibility to enroll in a new LEA. Because I don't know that this has been a problem as of late, but I know a couple of years ago it was a huge problem with students, with parents not knowing that they needed to enroll in a new LEA because their student is attending the non-public school. And these students are not out of sight, out of mind for you. So when they're about to reach the maximum age or grade range for your LEA, make sure you're providing that notification at least 120 days prior to the end of the school year. So here are some best practices for LEA monitoring of non-public students. And this is from guidance that's on OSSE's website that can help you meet your obligations around monitoring these students. So we recommend that you reach out to non-public schools where your LEA students are placed. Having a good relationship with those non-public schools will help you get a lot done. It's going to help you get access into those IEP team meetings, and it will help facilitate a better relationship between you and the school so that you can work together to ensure that that student is being served appropriately. And this is where we bring in the recommendation that you have a written agreement that clearly defines your LEA and your non-public responsibilities, especially around completion of assessments and evaluations. Again, you want to make sure that non-public staff has appropriate and necessary access to SEDS that is key for documenting service provision. You want to work with the non-public school to schedule IEP meetings and reevaluations. Check that the non-public school has all the necessary service providers in place to fulfill IEP responsibilities for students who are attending the non-public school. So if the student requires speech, you want to make sure they have a speech therapist there. Before the child is placed in the non-public school, OSSI will make that determination to ensure that the non-public school is able to serve the student. But as part of your monitoring of the non-public school, you want to make sure that the non-public school maintains the capacity to serve those students. You want to set monthly calendar reminders to run your RSMR to make sure that services are being provided and documented appropriately. And you want to make sure that plans are in place for statewide assessments, so for PARC and MSAA.
Great. Thank you so much, Christy. Just one thing I wanted to restate from the information that Christy just presented. Ensuring that the student is enrolled in the correct non-public school in your student information system is a critical first step in making sure that we can provide access to the non-public school. If you are experiencing a problem with that, typically the non-public school is a school that's in your SIS building. If you require some additional assistance with that, typically your data manager or registrar can assist you with that function, or that's definitely something you can reach out to your DAR liaison for more information. So moving on to the point of access for those non-public staff members, after you have added that student to the appropriate non-public school in your student information system, this is what pushes the student to the non-public school in SEDS. Now, Pauline Miller-John is going to talk more about non-public staff access in SEDS.
Thank you, Rita. OSSI has been getting, again, my name is Pauline Miller-John. I'm going to talk about non-public staff access in SEDS. OSSI has been getting a lot of feedback from non-public saying that they don't have access to the students in order to do their related service duties. So one of the things we want to do is reiterate again today who can provide access to those students for the non-public staff members. LEA SPED POCs are responsible for protecting the privacy of the student information by controlling what access is given to the non-public users. The LEA POCs should not create aggregate accounts. Those aggregate account users are typically related service providers, and OSSI is the one that creates the aggregate accounts for the users. The responsibility of the LEA SPED POC is to request access for those non-public users in the OSSI support tool. OSSI will then add the user to the LEA site. The LEA SPED POC will give only specific schools, so whatever non-public school that individual is associated with, the LEA SPED POC will give access to that specific school for that non-public user. And the LEA SPED POC will add the student to the caseload. OSSI does not add students to caseloads for non-public providers. SED access for non-public staff requires that OSSI, the non-public SPED POC, and the LEA work together. In order to accomplish that, the non-public SPED point of contact needs to assign, as I said before, the campus to that non-public user once OSSI has created that aggregate account. They need to coordinate the SED access for the non-public staff and also train the non-public staff on how to use SED. And this is what the non-public SED point of contact does. The LEA SPED POC is responsible for overseeing the access to that individual student and also the school in which the student is being serviced. The OSSI help desk staff are the only ones that work with the non-public SPED POC and also the LEA SPED POC. So just to reiterate, ensuring that they have access, because a lot of the stuff that we have been getting is that they don't see the student. A lot of the times, when we provide the aggregate account access here at OSSI, we inform the aggregate user of their user ID and their password, but it's upon the LEA to actually assign that specific campus to that non-public individual that we just gave access to, and also assign the student to them. So some of the feedback and some of the hiccups is that they are not seeing the students because sometimes the school is not assigned to them in order for them to see the students in which you're assigning. So just be mindful that to make sure that some of the troubleshooting stuff that you're happening, that making sure that that individual actually has access to the correct campus in which they're servicing the student, and that student is actually on their case.
Okay, thank you, Pauline. And just to restate what Pauline said, you do not want to give the non-public schools access to all the schools or campuses in your LEA instead. So you definitely want to make sure that you're giving only access to the school or campus in which your student is attending. Next, now that and we're assuming here, now that your non-public school has access in the system, and your student is attending, we want to know about that attendance. How does that attendance get monitored for non-public schools? Ms. Yvonne Smith will be talking about attendance monitoring for non-public schools.
Okay, thank you, Rita. Okay. SEATS. SEATS is a system that we use here in OSSI, and you have access to monitor students' attendance at non-public schools. SEATS is an acronym for Special Education Attendance Tracking System. So with that, SEATS is the system that the non-publics have access to actually record the daily attendance of each non-public student that's enrolled in your LEA. And on the other side of that, you as an LEA have access to SEATS through SLED, and we'll show you that a little bit later. So again, SEATS is the attendance tracking system. It's a system that will allow you as an LEA to see your students' daily attendance. You can do that without contacting the non-public or requesting attendance log. You can just log into this system and see it for yourself as you feel necessary. SEATS is a web-based program. Schools are preloaded according to your student rosters. So you have to make sure that you have your student rosters correct in your SIS, and it just flows through SEDS and the SLED and all that. So if your student roster isn't correct, then the student wouldn't be loaded in SEATS. So that's one of the errors that we get. So number one, you have to make sure your student roster is correct. Within SEATS, there are all kinds of things that the non-public can do. They can put in documentation and write comments as to why a student is absent or excused. There are weekly automated reminders for the non-public. There are visual alerts for different absence thresholds, and you'll see that a little bit later. You can make student entry adjustments, like if a student comes into the non-public in the middle of the week or the middle of the month, there's certain ways to show when exactly the student entered and when the student was discharged. As an LEA, you have the responsibility for unlocking attendance for non-public recording, and we'll see that a little later in the slides. The system is password protected, and all reports are in SEATS and in SLEDs. The non-public could get their reports through SEATS, but you as the LEA get your reports through SLED. And again, the data review for you as an LEA is through SLED, but for the non-public, it's the actual SEATS system, and OSSI itself is able to review all this documentation through SLED also. Okay, so this is kind of an overview of what SEATS looks like and the different responsibilities. So the non-public will contact our team to get access to SEATS. The non-public's responsibility is to record the attendance. They submit the attendance weekly and monthly. They're able to review it, they're able to make updates, and they're able to make different requests within that attendance, particularly to you, the non-public, if there's a need to unlock something. As the LEA, you're responsible for loading the student files, meaning your student rosters, to make sure that that is accurate. Again, as Rita and Pauline talked about earlier, your SIS has to be up to date in order for this information to flow into SEAT so that the attendance and that student will also show up on the roster in SEAT. You're also responsible for unlocking the attendance. Each non-public has 1 month to enter attendance, and on the 5th day of the next month, the attendance will be locked for the previous month. So for March, they have this month to enter the attendance for March, but on April 5th, March attendance will be locked. And if they have to make any changes or any entries to that attendance for March, the non-public will have to contact you, the LEA, to unlock that attendance. And this gives you the opportunity to know, okay, what's happening. It could be an alert, you know, what changed or something, but it should be a flag that something's going on that you may or may not need to know. And then OSSI also has access to these systems just for review purposes and to support and even to just to improve the whole process. So the process as it works, non-public campuses will enter their attendance. There are certain codes that they use in the document and the system. You can see the legend for those codes. There are visual alerts during the entry for the students. And when I say that, the attendance is color-coded. So you'll see, in accordance with our attendance policies that are documented in the OSSI COA, you'll see different thresholds for times you should be alerted or concerned about a student's attendance. So if a student is present every day, you'll just see regular, a P or something. But when the student begins to get consecutive absences, you'll start to see colors appear. So at the 5th consecutive absence, it may be yellow. At the 10th consecutive absence, it may turn a different color, but then after 15 or more, it turns red. So those are your alerts that something is going on with the student, and hopefully by then the non-public has contacted you to discuss this, but if they have not, you should be monitoring seats through SLED to see these alerts, and again, it's your responsibility, then you should be contacting the non-public to discuss this. Attendance is recorded on Wednesdays and Fridays, and, you know, they're kind of at liberty to do it, you know, any day of the week. And the system sends automatic reminders to the users to input the attendance. The attendance last day is the current of the, you submit the attendance the last day of the current month, so they would submit March's attendance on March 31st or March 30th or whatever that Friday is. They can recall and edit the attendance within the first 4 days of the next month. So April 1st through April 4th, they can make edits on their own. But again, as I shared, the system will lock on April 5th, and no other edits can be made, no other inputs can be made. So they would have to contact you, the LEA, to advise that they need the attendance unlocked. And again, that's an opportunity for you to find out what's going on with the student or why they needed to unlock that data. Then the data can be viewed by you, the LEA, through SLED. Okay, so this is just a demonstration of what the attendance log looks like. They would be entering the attendance for the week on Wednesday up to that point, and then again on Friday. You know, there will be weekly reminders to say if a week goes by and nobody puts anything in, even at the Wednesday and Friday, because it's preferred that they do it kind of as much of real time as preferred. the system will send them a reminder saying on Wednesday, hey, I don't see any attendance noted here, and it'll do it again on Friday. Okay, the attendance submission process. It's a monthly action. Again, it occurs on the last weekday of the month. The final submission is kind of an assertion that the attendance is accurate. Again, you would think that people are doing their own Q&A along the way, so that they don't have to make edits or they don't have to contact you to unlock. But, again, sometimes things happen, and what may have been marked as an unexcused day then becomes an excused day or whatever. But, just note that on their final submission, it's our expectation that data is accurate, but we did allow for the LEA to be able to unlock that. And again, the reason for that is so that you're alerted to any differences or changes in the student's attendance during a particular time. And as you see there, that's again, as I said, the last day of the month. So from March 31st, they have to enter the attendance for the entire month. They have a window up to April 4th to be able to edit it, but on April 5th, it becomes locked. And then from April 5th on, they'll have to contact you, the LEA, to open up that attendance to make any changes. Within SEATS, there are all kinds of reports that are available. This is an attendance summary report. They can pull up their campus and all the students that they have enrolled at their non-public school. Now, this is the non-public view. They're looking at all the students that are enrolled in their school, regardless of the LEA they're enrolled. However, when you go in through SLED, you can run this same report. You'll only see your own students that are enrolled at that LEA. And again, you'll see all the flags and the color coding signs that should alert you as to a problem regarding a student's attendance. And just remember, when you see that red, that means you need to act right away. You need to be contacting that non-public school and/or you, and action must be taken, because this is a compliance point, and it also will impact the student's payment, the school's payment, excuse me. Okay, flag report. You can also get a report that tells you for each student attending what type of attendance consistencies they've had or not had. So this is an example of the different color coding in there, so you can see the different types of flags. The student has 5 days absent, 10 days absent. It also records days throughout the school year. So if a student, I think the threshold for the whole school year is you can only be absent, maybe like 10 days throughout the whole school year or something like that. It'll give you that flag too throughout the school year. So Johnny could have sporadic absences throughout the year, but this system will flag for you that student has reached the maximum allowable attendance absences for the entire school year. And that's an important tool there. As you know, we've been highlighted for all kinds of attendance issues and graduation issues. So that's an item that will impact a student's graduation requirements. Again, these reports are available to you through SLED. And the non-public also has this report available to them through SEATS itself. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And we did have one question about that report in SLED. Yvonne, where is that located in SLED, that attendance report? Okay, we'll get that information and communicate that out to the person that was asking that question. And thank you so much for that part. So now that your student is fully enrolled in the non-public through your student information system, and you know what the requirements are related to non-public schools, you're now able to confirm that the student is attending that non-public school. Let's look at service logging and documentation. So each LEA must fully utilize, implement, and enter accurate information in SES. So that is for the service logs for each student that's enrolled in that or placed in the non-public school. So ensuring timely documentation of service provision, ensuring that students receive services in accordance with their IEPs, making sure that related services as prescribed on the IEP are fulfilled, and that the timely documentation of that services or the services are happening in SED. So, steps for logging and verifying services. Your related service providers should be entering regular service logging in SED. So they should already have access in SED to create a service log using the logging wizard. So within 5 days of each session, now that is the guidance. Of course, it may be different at your LEA, but this is, or at that non-public, but this is what we advise, that folks are completing the service logging within 5 days of the session. Generate the service tracker. So the LEA determines how often this is done. So you, I'm assuming, would be communicating to them that you may want to have this done weekly, that they're generating a service tracker. And then they will complete the progress report at the end of the progress report period. So in creating a delivered service log, we want to make sure that folks are using the correct delivery status, attempted, delivered, or not delivered. On the service type, you want to also ensure that direct service is being used. Now, if student absent or student unavailable is selected, you now have the ability to cross-check that information with your attendance reports that you are receiving through the SEAT system. You always want to enter the duration of service. Remember, 0 is never an acceptable duration for your service logging. And also group size, we'll talk about an update to that a little later. But you will never use 0 for a group size when a service is delivered. So these are just things for you to look out for as a special ed POC. Of course, you're not the person that is entering this information, but you are the person that's responsible for making sure that this has been completed. Next, we want to talk just briefly about creating a missed service log. Providers are required to do this. So this is when a service is scheduled, but it's missed. The related service provider is going to create a log, and that is reflecting that the service was missed. So an incorrect service delivery status, types, or duration will affect the service tracker, RSMR, and Medicaid billing. Remember that the reports related to service logging or services delivered versus services prescribed, all of those different reports that we'll talk about just a little later, are all contingent upon your service providers entering accurate service logs in SED. Next, confirming service log entry. Once they have entered the information in the system, it will allow them an opportunity to confirm that the information is correct. They also have an opportunity to delete the information and log another service, or they can just delete this entry altogether and have another try at logging the missed documentation. Along these same lines, I also want to talk just briefly about the Related Services Management Report. Although we will not get into a full training in the context of today's training, I do want to stress the fact that the Related Services Management Report is essentially analyzing that information that you see entered in SEDS already. So it is very important that your providers are creating those service trackers so that the information is filtering to those downstream systems and reports that is used for. So this will provide a view, the RSMR provides a view of service delivery for your non-public schools. The CLIC report creates a visualization of that data from SEDS. And I think everybody is aware, but I do want to restate that the SEDS report has been retired. We know everybody loved it and used it quite frequently, but it is no more. So you have to use the information that's in the CLIC report. What information are you going to see when you go to the RSMR and CLIC? You're going to see service delivery, prescribed and delivered. You'll see missed services, makeup service information, and the most important part, provider productivity metrics. You'll be able to see all that. Now, I don't want to let the cat out of the bag too early, but there's going to be a revamp of RSMR, and you'll see that in the coming weeks. We'll probably make a large announcement about that at the Start of School Summit, so you'll see more information about the revamp of RSMR.
Good morning, everyone.
Hold on 1 second.
Oh, I'm sorry, just 1 second. I was just going to take a quick pause to take any questions before we get into that last section here. So if there are any questions, I'm just going to mute for just a moment to allow you guys to put in any questions that you have about what we've covered thus far.
Okay, so we've gotten a few questions. Someone asked about absences for students attending non-public schools and what requirements apply there. So DC attendance laws still apply to students who are attending non-public schools, but it is likely that your LEA policy around attendance will address a lot of those more individualized nature of attendance. So like the maximum amount of attendance of absences allowed, notifications and things like that. So you always want to be referring to your LEA policy. We also got a question about how to work with non-publics when they're not following through with their responsibilities. And OSSI has some guidance on its website that I referred to earlier that we can link to in the follow-up email. We encourage you to refer to that guidance. It's really about forging those relationships with the non-public so that you don't get to the point of like, how do I make them do something? But if it does get to the point that you think that you need assistance intervening with the non-public school, you can contact OSSI and specifically Dr. Edgar Stewart, who oversees the non-public monitoring team, and they can assist in reaching out to the non-public to discuss whatever the specific issue is, because it really kind of does depend on what responsibilities they're not implementing and the best way to approach it from there.
Okay, earlier the question was asked, how do I get to seats through SLED? For LEAs, you would log on to SLED, you would click on the Programs tab at the top of SLED, and in the drop-down, you'll see an option for non-public attendance, and that's where you'll get access to review that seats information. The other thing I wanted to bring up and just emphasize, when we were going through doing the service logs, it's also so very important that everyone who is creating logs, at some point along the way, that you have to remember to go back and create the service tracker. There's nothing currently in SEDS that prompts you to do that, but remember the log, and this is just my kind of way of thinking of this, the log is just you noting something on your notebook at your desk that nobody sees. When you click that service tracker button, it then creates a document that everybody else can see. So if your providers are not setting some type of regular practice of going back and issuing the service tracker, again, the difference, the service log and then the service tracker, then that service tracker will not be documented. And the service tracker is important for the non-public school to complete that task because it's linked to their payment. OSSI will not remit payment for related services if a service tracker does not exist. So that's why you may be getting some calls or contacts from the non-public schools regarding, I cannot see the student, I don't have access to the student. So it's so important, again, all these things that we're talking about kind of lead into each other. So if they don't have access to the student in SEDS, then they can't create the logs, they can't create the trackers, and eventually they will not get paid for services provided to that student. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, so now let's talk about ESY. Let's talk about the ESY requirements for TOTE. And we have our transportation partners logging in. Hello, good morning.
Hey, good morning. How you doing? This is Doug Johnson speaking on behalf of CDOT. If we could go to the second slide, please, with the changes to TOTE for 2019. So as you all know, we are rolling out a new version of TOTE powered by Salesforce in preparation for ESY 2019 and also school year 2019-20. So it's a new system. It's going to be integrated, easy to use. It's cloud-based. Everything will be streamlined. And also the LEAs will be granted access after they're completing one of the mandatory training sessions. So if anybody's seen in the LEA, look forward. We had a register link there for our 13 training classes. And also we're trying to put out the first week of April the webinar. So the webinar-based training for some of the LEAs, I know it'll be hard for them to get out to school to come to a live training. And at the end of that webinar, that web-based training, you will have to take a test, to certify that you actually took the web-based training. So we want to make sure that people understand you have to take these classes in order to get access to the new system. Okay, and the training classes are designated as workshops. So once we go over a high-level view of the new system, and if you have your calendar information and you have your student information, we'll work with you right there to enter your information into the system so you get adjusted to using the new system. If we go to the next slide, please. So the training workshops will cover the following areas: an overview of the new TOTE platform, updating and editing any effective changes to the calendars and the new application, The calendar template is also available for upload for us as well. And submitting transportation requests on the new application platform. And we'll go through the LEA certification process there for the upcoming ESY 2019 and 2019-20 school year. So until you will still be submitting SY 2018-2019 transportation requests and the quick base version of TOTE. But any new transportation requests for ESY 2019 and SY 2019-2020, we will have to submit those in the new system, okay? Go to the training slide, please. These are training dates that we have. The first one we did on the 19th went really well. So we just urge you all to just sign up for these classes, and they'll be here at 10:50. And again, the first week of April, we should have the web-based training available as well on the website, so you can take on OSSI's DOT's home website, so you can have the chance to take those as well. And once you take those classes, we will grant you access to the new system. Last slide, please. The next slide, please. Also, just remember the certification dates for ESY 2019 is Monday, May the 6th, 2019, and also Monday, June the 3rd for SY 2019-2020. Okay, and just make sure. Okay, and the deadlines again is ESY is May 26th. No, I'm sorry, May the 6th, 2019, and SY 2019-2020 will be June the 3rd. And if you have any questions or concerns, just always reach out to the TOTE support line at 202-576-5520.
Thanks, Doug. Can you explain again for ESY calendars and transportation requests if they're using the old or the new system, and the same for the school year? Like, how is that going to divide out?
So for any of the new transportation requests for the upcoming school term for ESY 2019 and SY 2019-2020, they will be inputted into the new TOTE system on Salesforce. So
Okay.
once that school representative takes the training course, we will grant them access to the new system. Their information will be in the system for the schools and everything, and they'll submit the transportation request information there. And while they're doing that, any old transportation requests for school year 2018-2019, they will still input those old transportation requests in the quick base version of TOTE.
Great, thank you.
No problem.
All right. Now, as we are wrapping up today's broadcast, we want to just go over our announcements and reminders.
Good morning, everyone. This is Karen Morgan Donaldson from IDEA Monitoring and Compliance. And I just wanted to give you a quick update related to reevaluation monitoring. We will be monitoring for reevaluation for the time period of October 1st, 2018 through March 31st, 2019 during the month of April. So please expect an initial report to be issued through DC CATS during that time. Just a quick reminder, once the initial report is released, each LEA has a 10-day window to make changes to any findings or initial findings that they are given. So during that 10-day window, LEAs have the opportunity to demonstrate a few things to show that they were actually compliant. So there's a few things. One, if the eligibility determination was completed timely, perhaps there was a data entry issue, or it could be a variety of things. But if you can, as an LEA, demonstrate that the actual eligibility determination was completed timely, please do so. Also, if the student is no longer enrolled in the LEA, you have the opportunity to demonstrate that as well. If the student is no longer receiving special education services, and if the student had a transfer event during that timeline, during that reporting period, you can demonstrate that as well. through DC CATS. So we are asking that you upload that information into DC CATS so that your monitor can double check that and mark that in the system. If you cannot demonstrate any of these 4 specific situations, but the reevaluation did take place, although untimely, you can still upload the information to show that the meeting actually took place. Then you will complete all of the corrections in DC CAT. If you have any questions, please reach out to me, Karen Morgan Donaldson, or you can also reach out to your LEA monitor. And this is I was just revisiting that slide, that this is no new information at this time. The next slide that we're reviewing just shows you where you can find this report in DC CATS. It's under Reports, Special Conditions, May 2019, and you'll find it under there. Again, any questions, contact me or your LEA IDEA monitor. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. So OSSI would like to announce that the Early Access to Students with Disabilities CLIC application is going to be relaunching in late April. This year is going to include a flag for students who had previously received Part C early intervention services. And this is to assist LEAs in knowing when a child may be transitioning from Part C into your LEA so that you can ensure that services are in place on the first day of school or within 14 days thereafter. OSSI is also going to be releasing some additional guidance around your responsibilities for those students. But in the early access application, we are specifically flagging those students for you. And this application generally provides timely and appropriate access to students with disabilities information that you cannot access until you get access to their files and SEDS generally. This basically is a CLIC application that re-images the information in SEDS into a spreadsheet so you can see information for students such as primary disability, service hours, related services, rates and frequencies. You can also see if the student receives or if the student is eligible for transportation, if the student has assistive technology needs, if they're eligible for ESY. There is a whole bunch of information in there, and this is to alleviate the issue where LEAs don't have access to these students in SEDS until later in the year, and later in the summer, I mean, because of all of the database implications. So you can't access those students in SEDS until your LEA's student information system switches over from the prior school year to the current school year. And we know that you need access to that information over the summer so that you can appropriately plan for those students coming to your LEA. And we'll give a quick overview of this application next month, but we just wanted to let you know that it will launch in late April. And we're going to be flagging children who had previously received Part C early intervention services, and then we're also going to be providing trainings on this application at the Start of School Summit, which you'll also be getting more information from OSSI about.
Great. Next announcement is there will be a comparable services let me start that over. On the comparable services consult letter in SEDS, we are now including the primary disability. Currently, you don't have that information on the consult letter. So this will be a required field. It'll be a drop down within the district's primary disability list, and it will be additional information is really necessary for Medicaid billing. But this field will not populate primary disability on the eligibility and IEP. Don't forget, you are still required after you complete the comparable services process to go through the eligibility process instead. So you'll see that update coming soon. Next update in SEDS, you will see assessment duration update. No longer are folks going to be able to add zeros or a zero as an assessment duration. It's impossible. Couldn't have lasted for 0 minutes, right? Mm-hmm. So, and the purpose of that is really for Medicaid billing and compliance. And it's going to require you to enter any exact sizes for your group, up to from 1 to 20. The next thing I want to talk about just quickly as we are wrapping up here is administrative removal in SEDS. Rita, why are we still talking about this? Because folks are still not doing this correctly. If you are looking to administratively remove a student in SEDS, please make sure that you complete the required documentation. Now, are all these documents required for every student? Absolutely not. But where applicable, make sure that you have completed a prior written notice, summary of performance, age out forms, and graduation documentation if required. So if you are submitting an OST ticket and you said, I need to have this student removed, the student is already graduated, but you don't have the graduation with diploma document in SEDS, then we're probably not going to process that request. So make sure that you have the appropriate documentation, and then we are happy to move forward with getting a student administratively removed from SEDS. Next, we will just review a few ESY data system deadlines.
So Doug already spoke to this a little bit, but here are reminders around your responsibilities for ESY 2019. You want to make sure that you're finalizing eligibilities and documenting those eligibilities, and also completing your transportation eligibility and request forms, enter your ESY calendar dates, and then after service provision begins, enter your service trackers, and enter your progress reports. And so the TOTE system, you want to make sure that you are entering your TRF. Any school plus, you need to be creating ESY calendars, and that is a responsibility that is likely to be carried out by your LEA data manager. So make sure that you are collaborating with them if you are not already them, because we know a lot of you wear many hats. Make sure that you're collaborating with them to ensure that that data is put into eSchool Plus as soon as possible. And then in the ESY module within SLED, you're going to be putting in your ESY site locations, assigning students to those locations, and then once service provision begins, indicating attendance in that module. And we'll also be sending out the 2019 ESY memo to your heads of school and special education POCs in the next couple of weeks. Great.
Okay, as a reminder, training and other resources, getting started with SEDS, related service provision. This is a great recorded training that you can share with non-public related service providers. Navigating the initial eligibility process in SEDS. This is a recorded webinar, one of our best productions of that particular training. And then there is a wonderful 200-page SEDS user guide, step-by-step instructions and screenshots. Use responsibly. We also have the LEA Special Ed POC monthly webinar recording. So this is a link. If you have missed any previous webinars and you want to review any of that information, those recorded webinars are available on our website for your review. I'd like to thank everyone for participating in today's training. For special ed POCs, our next webinar will be held on Wednesday, April 24th. You all should already be registered for that. So, from our OSSE Divisions of Data, Assessment and Research, Student Transportation, SSK-12, Teaching and Learning, and our non-public team, we'd like to thank you for your participation today. Make the rest of your day the best of your day. Have a great afternoon.